Let me ask you something. Have you ever found yourself in an argument with someone who was obviously wrong, factually, logically, painfully wrong, yet they carried themselves with such certainty, such unshakable confidence, that for a moment you began to question yourself? It feels like staring into a mirror that distorts reality. You know the reflection isn't accurate, and yet the way they project their certainty makes you doubt your own eyes. That moment right there reveals one of the most unsettling truths about human nature. The less people know, the more certain they often become, and the more dangerous it gets. Not because of their ignorance, but because of the confidence that comes with it. Think about it. Confidence is magnetic. It pulls people in. It convinces crowds. It silences doubt. History is littered with examples of leaders, preachers, politicians, and so-called thinkers who had no real depth of understanding, but possessed an aura of absolute certainty, and people followed them, blindly. The German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who resisted the horrors of Nazi Germany, once said, "Stupidity is a more dangerous enemy of the good than malice." Why? Because malice, you can fight, you can see it, you can resist it. But stupidity, armed with confidence, parades as truth. It convinces itself that it's right, and it cannot be argued with. The fool, Bonhoeffer said, becomes self-satisfied and immune to reason. That is the scary confidence of stupid people. Psychologists today describe this as the Dunning-Kruger Effect, the tendency for people with the least ability to overestimate their competence. In other words, ignorance blinds itself. The less you know, the less aware you are of how little you know. It's like a child who draws a stick figure and believes they've painted the Mona Lisa. The tragedy is not the stick figure. It's the misplaced certainty that convinces them they're already an artist. And here's the twist. This isn't just about other people. It's about us. All of us. Because deep inside, each of us has blind spots where we are convinced we're right, even when we might be utterly wrong. That's the uncomfortable truth. We are not immune to the arrogance of ignorance. We are only unaware of where it hides within us. Philosophers have warned us about this for centuries. Socrates, often considered the wisest of all, said, "I know that I know nothing." His wisdom was not in possessing answers, but in recognizing the depth of his ignorance. Contrast that with the arrogant certainty of the foolish man, who carries himself as if he holds the keys to all knowledge. Nietzsche, in his sharp critique of human behavior, described this as the herd mentality. People do not seek truth, he said, they seek certainty. And certainty, even false certainty, feels safer than doubt. This is why crowds can be swayed by the loudest, most confident voice, even if that voice speaks nonsense. Machiavelli, in The Prince, wrote that people are more easily deceived by appearances than by reality. The confident fool understands this instinctively. They don't need truth on their side, they only need to look and sound certain. And in a world where most people fear doubt, confidence becomes a weapon stronger than knowledge. Let's pause here. Think about your own life. Maybe it's a coworker who argues with you in meetings with absolute confidence, even when they have no idea what they're talking about. Maybe it's a friend or relative who insists they're right about politics, science, or philosophy, while their arguments are paper thin. Maybe it's a stranger online, pounding the keyboard with certainty, drowning the conversation with confidence, while reason and nuance are left behind. And the worst part? Sometimes they win. Not because they're right, but because confidence feels more convincing than quiet wisdom. Here's the uncomfortable twist. Society rewards confidence more than truth. Job interviews, political campaigns, leadership roles, they all tend to favor the one who speaks with conviction, not necessarily the one who speaks with depth. Plato warned of this in his allegory of the cave. Most people mistake shadows for reality. The confident fool points to the shadows and says, "This is the truth," and the crowd believes him. Because his voice is steady, his certainty unshaken, and his shadow looks brighter than yours. But truth, as Plato knew, is harder. Truth requires humility. Truth requires saying, "I could be wrong," and that, ironically, sounds weaker in a world that worships confidence. So where does that leave us? If stupidity armed with confidence is so powerful, what chance does wisdom have? This is where philosophy becomes brutally honest. Wisdom rarely shouts. Wisdom often doubts. Wisdom questions itself. And that makes it look fragile in the face of arrogance. But here's the paradox. Doubt is not weakness, it's strength. The fool fears doubt because it threatens his illusion of intelligence. The wise embrace doubt because it opens the path to growth. Bonhoeffer was right. Stupidity is more dangerous than malice. But Nietzsche reminds us, danger is also an opportunity. If ignorance spreads by confidence, wisdom spreads by courage. The courage to admit uncertainty in a world terrified of it. Let's strip this down to something deeply human. Think about the people you admire most. Not the loudest voices, not the ones who always claim to be right, but the ones who admit when they're wrong. The ones who listen before they speak. The ones who pause, reflect, and then offer insight. That quiet strength doesn't always win the crowd, but it wins something greater, truth. And truth doesn't need to scream, it only needs to survive. So the next time you face the scary confidence of stupid people, remember this. Certainty is not proof. Volume is not wisdom. Confidence is not intelligence. Do not envy the fool's confidence. Do not wish for his blind certainty, because ignorance, wrapped in arrogance, is not strength. It is weakness disguised as power. Instead, embrace your doubt. Question yourself. Allow yourself to feel uncertain, because in that discomfort lies the first step toward real wisdom. Let me leave you with this thought. History remembers the loud fools for a moment, but it remembers the humble thinkers for centuries. Socrates still speaks. Nietzsche still provokes. Plato still challenges us. Why? Because truth, even whispered, echoes longer than stupidity shouted with confidence. So ask yourself, will you live chasing the false comfort of always feeling right? Or will you carry the heavier burden, the courageous path of wisdom, by daring to admit that sometimes you might be wrong? The answer to that question may just decide whether you live as a fool who feels smart or as a thinker who dares to be human.